I want you to picture the year 2000.
Okay, setting the scene.
Yeah, so you're 10 years old. You're sitting cross-legged on the carpet in front of, one of those slightly bulky.
Right, the ones that weighed like 50 pounds.
Exactly. You've just finished your homework, and you are tuning in to Nickelodeon.
The ultimate after-school ritual.
Right. You're watching Zoe 101 or iCarly, and you are just completely ready to check out for half an hour.
Yeah.
You watch kids roughly your age get into these massive, colorful, highly choreographed situations. Somebody drops a cake, or a wacky invention explodes.
Or some crazy misunderstanding spirals out of control.
Exactly. But over the next 23 minutes, the problem is neatly solved. The laugh track swells, the credits roll, and you move on with your evening feeling perfectly entertained.
I mean, it was a masterclass in structural escapism.
Oh, absolutely.
If you look at the media landscape of the mid-2000s, nobody was better at building those insulated, hyper-stylized youth universes than Nickelodeon. They perfected this formula that just completely suspended the anxieties of the real world for kids.
But, and this is where things get really dark, fast forward 18 years.
Right.
It's 2026. If you go back and put on those exact same episodes today, something feels profoundly off.
Yeah, it's a totally different experience now.
And I'm not just talking about outdated fashion or like early internet references. I mean the actual content.
Scripts themselves.
Right. When you watch these shows with an adult's understanding of boundaries, the slapstick suddenly reads as deeply uncomfortable.
It really does. You start noticing heavy double entendres.
Yeah, and you see mimed acts that clearly mimic adult behavior.
You see bizarre, lingering camera angles.
Exactly. Jokes that flew right past your 10-year-old brain suddenly land. And you find yourself looking at the screen thinking, wait, who wrote this?
Right.
And how did this make it onto a children's network?
That dissonance.
Yeah.
I mean, the gap between the nostalgia of what you remember and the reality of what was actually broadcast.
Yeah.
That is the core of what we are examining today. When you trace the origin of that specific brand of uncomfortable humor across a massive slate of Nickelodeon's biggest hit shows, well, all roads lead back to one central figure.
Which brings us to the mission for today. We are taking a deep dive into an extensive extraction of facts, internal documents, and industry revelation compiled in our source material, Dan Schneider, the Nickelodeon Predator.
It's a heavy topic.
It is. We are going to map out the empire built by Dan Schneider, analyze the mechanics of his show-running power, and examine the systemic corporate structures that allegedly protected a highly toxic environment for years.
But before we really get into the timeline, I think we need to establish the parameters of this deep dive.
Absolutely, that's crucial.
Because the source material contains highly disturbing allegations regarding systemic failures and workplace toxicity. Our mandate here is total impartiality.
Right.
It is vital for you, the listener, to understand that lawsuits surrounding these events are ongoing.
Yes, very much so.
Many of the accusations we will analyze remain unproven in a court of law. And crucially, no criminal charges have been proven against Dan Schneider himself.
Right. He adamantly denies the most serious accusations of sexual harassment.
Exactly. Our goal is not to litigate guilt or innocence here. Our goal is to synthesize the provided material to understand the mechanics of the industry.
Yeah.
We are looking at how a television network's corporate structure allegedly managed risk, prioritizing profit over the fundamental well-being of the minors working on its sound stages.
Okay, let's unpack. Because to understand how a corporation manages a liability, well, you first have to understand how that liability became so valuable in the first place.
Right, you have to look at the foundation.
I can't just look at the fallout. You have to look at the architecture of the empire. So we are going back to the start.
The very beginning.
Yeah. Dan Schneider wasn't some corporate suit who parachute dropped into children's television from a boardroom. He was born in Memphis, Tennessee in 1960.
And his entry into Hollywood was entirely as a performer. He actually started in theater back in high school before making the move to LA.
Right. And his entry was unusually frictionless.
Oh, incredibly so. If you look at the standard trajectory of an actor moving to Los Angeles, there is almost always a prolonged period of struggle.
Yeah, like waiting tables.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Auditioning for commercials, working in restaurants, just trying to get a foot in the door. Schneider essentially bypassed that phase entirely.
He skipped the whole starving artist thing.
He really did. Within a year of moving to LA, between 1984 and 1985, he landed roles in 3 different films.
Wow.
So he had a very immediate practical education in how film sets operated right out of the gate.
And by 1986, he hits a major television milestone. He gets cast in a sitcom called Head of the Class.
Right.
Now, for some context, this was a show about a group of ultra-gifted high school students in New York. And on this show, Schneider played a very specific archetype.
The archetypal chunky sidekick.
Exactly. He was the larger, quick-witted, cynical side. I look at this casting and I see the exact mold of 1980s television.
Oh, yeah.
He wasn't positioned as the romantic lead. His narrative function was to stand just off-center, deliver the biting wisecrack, and guarantee the audience's laughter while the other characters handled the emotional heavy.
And I mean, it's an incredibly vital function sitcom structure.
Definitely.
The sidekick is the rhythm section of the comedy. And historically, actors who nail that specific archetype can build highly lucrative, lifelong careers just playing variations of that character.
Right, they become a reliable commodity.
But the source material makes it clear that being a reliable on-screen commodity was not the ceiling of his ambition.
Let me test a theory here, because I think this is where the psychology of his career gets really interesting.
Okay, let's hear it.
If you are a smart, observant person working in 1980s Hollywood, you eventually realize there is a typecast ceiling. You realize that the industry is never going to put your face on the center of the billboard. So instead of fighting a losing battle against the superficial metrics of casting directors, you decide to change the game entirely.
You step behind the camera.
Exactly. Where the actual power. In 1993, he transitioned into a writing role for the new Nickelodeon sketch show, All That.
Which was huge.
Massive. From there, his trajectory isn't just fast, it's vertical. By 1996, at age 30, he launches his own production company, Schneider's Bakery.
Wow, at 30.
Right. And by 1999, he is the creator and showrunner of The Amanda Show.
Incredible rise.
So my question is this. If you bypass the struggling actor phase and then immediately transition into the ultimate authority figure behind the scenes, did this early transition from sidekick to boss create an unchecked ego right out of...
If we connect this to the bigger picture, to understand why he never heard the word no, we have to break down what a showrunner actually is.
Okay, yeah.
A showrunner isn't just a head writer. They are the chief executive officer of that specific television program.
They run everything.
They manage the writer's room, they have final say on casting, they oversee the editing, and they are the primary liaison to the network exec.
So it's absolute control.
Exact. When Schneider took on that role, he proved to have an uncanny, almost surgical understanding of the youth demographic.
Right.
All That and The Amanda Show were massive hit, but he didn't stop there. He followed those with Drake and Josh, Zoe 101, iCarly, Victorious, and Sam and Cat.
I mean, he wasn't just creating shows. He was building a fully integrated talent pipeline.
Yes.
He was launching the careers of people like Miranda Cosgrove, Drake Bell, and Ariana Grande.
Precise. And this is the mechanical reality of the television industry. Networks do not assign value based on artistic merit. They assign value based on yield.
It's all about the money.
It is. Schneider was creating intellectual property that generated billions of dollars in ad revenue, merchandising, and syndication rights.
Billion.
To the executives at Nickelodeon, he functioned as a foundational load-bearing pillar of the network's entire financial structure.
Wow, a load-bearing pillar.
The executives knew that if they pulled that pillar out, their quarterly earnings would collapse.
Right.
When an individual achieves that level of financial indispensability within a corporate structure, traditional oversight mechanisms like human resources or script standards, they begin to warp.
They stop working.
They stop functioning as regulators and start functioning as facilitators.
A load-bearing pillar.
Yeah.
That makes absolute sense. And it perfectly explains how we get to the actual content that was being broadcast. Because if the executives are functioning as facilitators rather than regulators, the showrunner has total creative autonomy.
Exactly.
Which brings us to what the source calls the retroactive investment by the internet. Because for years, there were whispers.
Lots of whispers.
But eventually, fans and journalists started actually cataloging the footage. And what they compiled is deeply unsettling.
The archival work done by the public here is extensive. We aren't talking about one or two isolated, arguably misinterpreted jokes.
No, not at all.
The source points out that there is an entire dedicated wiki page just for logging the innuendo on iCarly.
That is wild.
And BuzzFeed published a comprehensive listicle documenting 51 separate, highly inappropriate scenes across 6 of his shows.
51 scenes.
These were scenes involving characters placed in hypersexualized context, delivering double entendres that have no logical place in a script aimed at young teenagers.
And we need to anchor this in reality, right? Miranda Cosgrove was 14 years old when season 1 of iCarly.
Just 14.
These were minors being directed to perform these scripts. And alongside the dialogue, the internet sleuths pointed out a very specific recurring visual trope. There is a constant, almost obsessive focus on the young actress. And this wasn't just restricted to the broadcast episodes.
No, it went further.
The source material notes that Schneider allegedly posted bizarre behind-the-scenes pictures of these young actresses online, again, heavily focusing on their... It forces you to ask a very dark question. Was a creator leveraging a multi-million-dollar corporate apparatus to broadcast his own personal fetishes to a global audience of children?
Well, the defense often raised in these scenarios, and the source material explicitly addresses this is what we can call the Tarantino defense.
Oh, right.
Quentin Tarantino is a legendary filmmaker whose movies frequently feature prominent foot fetish imagery. People argue, well, if Tarantino is celebrated as an auteur for this, why is Schneider being vilified for quirky visual gag?
Right.
But that comparison collapses under the weight of one critical mechanical difference, which is Hollywood labor structures.
Yeah, because when Quentin Tarantino directs a movie, he is handing a script to an adult, fully unionized professional.
Exactly.
That actor can read the scene, assess their comfort level, and say, no, I'm not doing that, without fearing their parents will lose their house.
Precisely. When a 14-year-old actor is on a set, they're navigating a profound power imbalance.
Huge imbalance.
They are often the primary breadwinners for their family. They are highly conditioned to please the director. They do not have the agency to challenge the showrunner's creative vision.
Right.
Furthermore, Tarantino is making R-rated films for consenting adults. Schneider was making TVG programming for 11-year-olds.
But hold on, I have to play devil's advocate here, because I think about those living rooms in 2008.
Okay.
The kids weren't watching in a vacuum. The parents were sitting right there on the couch, theoretically monitoring what their kids were consuming.
Right.
If there are 51 highly inappropriate scenes, how did parents sitting right there on the couch just think, yeah, fair enough? How did millions of parents watch this and not immediately write letters to the FCC?
It's a great question.
How does it bypass the adult?
It bypasses them because of the neurological framing of the medium itself. Think about how a sitcom is constructed.
Okay.
It features brightly colored sets, oversized props, and most importantly, an aggressive laugh track. When an adult is passively watching a children's show, their brain processes these structural cues, the neon lockers, the canned laughter, and categorizes the incoming information as safe slapstick comedy.
Oh, wow.
It acts as a cognitive Trojan horse. The inappropriate innuendo is delivered so quickly and immediately followed by a cue to laugh that the parent's critical radar is effectively disarmed.
So they don't even process it as inappropriate.
Exactly. By the time they register that a joke might have been off color, the scene has already transitioned to a kid get a hit in the face with a pie.
So the format itself is the laugh track literally tells the parent, don't think about this, just chuckle.
Yeah.
That is chill. But here's the major. The parents at home might have been disarmed by the neon sets and the canned laughter.
Right.
But the corporate executives at Nickelodeon weren't watching it on a TV in their living room.
No, they were not.
They were reading the raw scripts. They were watching the raw, unedited dailies without the laugh tracks. They knew exactly what was being filmed.
They saw everything.
Yeah. Which brings us to the corporate shield.
The timeline of Nickelodeon's internal response is perhaps the most revealing aspect of this entire deep dive.
Yeah.
It shows us exactly how a corporation calculates the value of a human being versus the value of a brand. The public fracture happened in 2018.
Right.
On March 26th of that year, Nickelodeon released a statement announcing they were parting ways with Dan Schneider.
And the language they used was just a masterpiece of corporate sterility.
Oh, totally blunt.
They didn't say he was fired. They said they were not extending the current deal because they had conversations about next direction future opportunity.
Classic PR speak.
Exactly. And initially, the entertainment trades, like Deadline, reported that the split was due to well-documented temper. They framed it as, oh, he's just a difficult artist who yells. But the source material proves that this 2018 announcement wasn't a sudden decision. It was the endpoint of a years-long internal crisis.
That's right. The internal panic began much earlier. According to the source, in 2013, 5 years before the firing, Nickelodeon instituted a secret ban.
5 years earlier.
Yes. They explicitly forbade Schneider from interacting directly with the actors on the set of Sam and Cat.
Wait, I need to stop you there because I want to understand the actual mechanics of this.
Okay.
We just established that the showrunner is the CEO of the set. They oversee the tone, the blocking, the delivery. How do you physically run a television show if you are banned from the sound?
It's almost impossible.
Are you sitting in an office sending emails to a proxy director?
That is functionally what happened. He was reportedly forced to deliver his notes from his office, removed from the physical production floor.
That is...
From an industry perspective, this is an astonishing logistical hurdle. For a network to deliberately kneecap the efficiency of their own multi-million-dollar production, the perceived threat posed by that showrunner must have been immense.
Yeah, they must have been terrified.
They identified a liability so severe that physical separation was deemed necessary.
And it didn't end there. In 2017, as the global Me Too movement was forcing corporations to finally audit their own cultures, Nickelodeon launched an internal investigation into his behavior on the sets of Henry Danger and Game Shakers.
Right.
Now, the network claimed that this investigation found no evidence of sexual misconduct. However, it did uncover repeated systemic accusations of verbal abuse and rampant bullying.
Yes.
So you have a 2013 ban, a 2017 investigation confirming a toxic workplace, and finally, the 2018 exit. But the exit itself is the detail that truly broke my brain.
Oh, the payout.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because they didn't just fire him for cause. The source reports they handed him a reported $7 million payout on his way out the door.
It's staggering.
Here's where it gets really interesting. If executive after executive is signing off on script and they give a $7 million golden parachute to a guy they had to physically ban from set, isn't the network just as culpable as the creator? How does a corporation justify that?
Well, you have to look at the legal mechanisms of Hollywood contracts. High-level showrunners operate on pay-or-play contract, or they possess massive severance clauses tied to the syndication of their intellectual property.
So they are legally bound to pay.
Often, yeah. But beyond the contractual obligations, there's the strategy of risk management. A $7 million payout is not a reward. It is an insurance premium.
Oh, wow.
If a network fires a massive creator for cause, detailing the toxic behavior, they open themselves up to immense brand damage and potential secondary lawsuits from advertisers or parents.
Because it admits guilt.
Exactly. By paying him to leave quietly, they purchase his silence and secure a clean, sterile transition. They managed him as a liability internally, but external. They prioritize the unblemished image of the network. It's a textbook case of an institution protecting its brands rather than its vulnerable staff.
They bought a clean news site. But the flaw in that corporate strategy is that while the executives wanted to close the book, the child actors at the center were growing up. They were becoming adults with their own platforms, completely outside the control of Nickelodeon's PR department. The corporate silence bought them a few years, but eventually the dam broke.
Yes, it did.
And the person who swung the hammer was Jennette McCurdy.
In 2022, Jennette McCurdy released her wildly successful memoir titled I'm Glad My Mom Died.
Such an intense title.
It really is. Now, for context, McCurdy was 30 years old when it was released. She had lost her abusive mother in 2013. The book was a massive cultural event because it completely shattered the sanitized illusion of the child star.
Yeah.
It was a rigorous, deeply painful account of the severe abuse she endured from her mother, who aggressively forced her into the industry.
Her mother is the primary abuser in the narrative, but there is a secondary antagonist that looms over her entire career in the
Yes.
An executive she refuses to name, referring to him only as the creator.
Right.
This is the person who essentially built the vehicles for her stardom on iCarly and Sam and Cat. And the way she describes his behavior is textbook psychological manipulation.
It's chilling to read.
The source details a specific passage that highlights the danger of this dynamic. McCurdy describes a moment where the creator offers her an unsolicited massage.
Yeah.
He places his hand on her. She reacts physically, getting goosebumps. He notices, tells her she's cold, puts his jacket over her, and then begins patting her shoulders.
Right.
That patting seamlessly gradually transitions into a massage. She writes that she desperately wanted it to stop, but she was paralyzed by the fear of offending him. And while he is massaging her, he whispers to her, "Every kid out there would kill for an opportunity like the one you've got. You're very lucky."
What's fascinating here is, well, horrifying really, is the mechanics of that interaction. This is not just inappropriate workplace contact.
No.
It is the weaponization of an economic power imbalance. He is actively violating her physical boundaries, and in the exact same breath, he is verbally reminding her that he controls her entire livelihood.
He's trapping her.
He is linking her submission to her economic survival. It is a highly sophisticated form of conditioning. And according to her memoir, this behavior wasn't isolated. She alleged the creator yelled at her during intimate kissing scenes and mandated that underage actors wear revealing wardrobe choices.
But the detail that truly exposes the corporate machine is what happened when she finally tried to...
The hush.
Yeah. Nickelodeon allegedly offered McCurdy $300,000 to remain completely silent about her experiences with the...
It's just staggering.
This wasn't a severance package. It was explicitly described as hush money. Let's think about the sheer boldness of that offer.
Right.
Imagine being 21, traumatized, trying to figure out how to exist outside of this toxic ecosystem. And your employer, a multi-billion-dollar entity that makes cartoons and teen sitcoms, slides a check across a table to buy your silence.
Yeah.
What does that do to a young person's moral compass?
It's devastating, and it forces us to examine how non-disclosure agreements or NDAs function in the entertainment industry. They are frequently framed as standard corporate practice, protecting trade secrets. But in reality, they are often deployed as a weaponized legal tool against victims who lack leverage.
They silence people.
Exactly. The corporation uses its massive financial advantage to isolate the individual. What's fascinating here is the psychological toll of McCurdy's situation. She was squeezed between an abusive stage mother on one side and an alleged abusive boss on the other.
Nowhere to turn.
Right. McCurdy actually articulated this moral dilemma beautifully in her book. She wrote, "This is a network with shows made for children. Should they have some sort of moral compass?
Yeah.
Shouldn't they at least try to report to some sort of ethical standard?"
And the incredible thing is, she refused the money.
She walked away from it.
And by refusing to sign that NDA, she retained her voice. Her book became a runaway bestseller, and naturally, the public immediately deduced that the creator was Dan Schneider.
It didn't take long for people to put the pieces together.
Her willingness to step into the light created a permission structure for others to follow, which led directly to the 2024 documentary series, Quiet on Set, The Dark Side of Kids.
Right.
And this is where the narrative really shifts. It was no longer just about one actor's experience with one boss.
No, it became much bigger.
This documentary cracked open the entire ecosystem, shifting the focus from isolated incidents to a systemic, network-wide culture of toxicity.
The documentary shifted the focus from the soundstage to the genesis point of the toxicity, the writer's rooms.
Yeah.
If the showrunner is the architect of the environment, the writer's room is where the blueprints are drawn.
Yeah.
And the environment described by female writers on these shows was harrowing.
It sounded like an absolute nightmare.
It really did.
Yeah.
Jenny Kilgan and Christy Stratton, who wrote for The Amanda Show, detailed a workplace defined by severe sexism, harassment, and open hostility.
The specifics of what happened in that room. Kilgan alleged that when she tried to advocate for a fair salary, Schneider directly threatened her. Both women reported being the targets of relentless sexualized pranks. The documentary detailed claims that Schneider simulated sodomy on Stratton in the writer's room and constantly made jokes about Kilgan working as a sex phone operator.
It's unbelievable behavior.
It was so hostile that Kilgan eventually quit. She said, "There was no way I was going to be the only woman in that world with..."
Yeah.
But this raises a mechanical question for me. If a boss is simulating sex acts in a corporate office, why don't the employees just go to human resources?
Because the concept of human resources on a Hollywood production is largely an illusion.
Really?
Yeah. A television show operates as a pop-up corporation. The writers are often hired by the showrunner's specific production company, in this case, Schneider's Bakery, not directly by the network's corporate HR department.
So there's no HR to go to.
Exactly. If a writer has a complaint, the traditional chain of command requires them to report it to the line producer or the showrunner themselves.
Which is the person abusing them.
Right. It is a closed loop. There is no independent, neutral department empowered to discipline the person generating the network's revenue.
So the toxicity is structurally protected, and that unchecked control in the writer's room bled directly onto the set.
It absolutely did.
The source details how Schneider would use network resources to write and film highly specific, obsessive scenarios.
Like the hot tub scene.
Exactly. He wrote a scene for The Amanda Show where he, a grown man, sat fully clothed in a hot tub while a teenage Amanda Bynes sat next to him in a swimsuit.
When you remove the laugh track and the context of sketch comedy, that scene fundamentally changes.
It does.
It transitions from a quirky creative choice into a scenario where a showrunner is utilizing a multi-million-dollar budget and a crew of professionals to manifest a deeply inappropriate personal tableau.
And the on-set experiences of the other actresses featured in the documentary confirm how terrifying this environment is.
Yeah.
Ali D'Amico, who was on the Naked Brothers band, detailed being forced to perform a French kiss with a 30-year-old man on... And she was
terrific.
She protested. Her mother, who was on set, protested. But the production apparatus made it clear that if she didn't comply, she would be jeopardizing her entire career.
And she stated the experience gave her PTSD.
Right. Then you have Lori Beth Denberg from all that. She alleged that when she was 19, Schneider showed her pornography, gave her dirty phone calls, and fondled her during one of those unsolicited.
Yeah.
And when she finally hit her breaking point and told him to stop, he didn't apologize. He became hyper-aggressive and publicly berated her in front of the crew.
The reaction of the crew in that specific moment with Lori Beth Denberg is the Rosetta Stone for understanding this entire... She noted that while she was terrified by his public screaming, the dozens of adults standing around the set simply normalized. They blew it off as just another Tuesday.
Wow. Which makes the public relations defense launched by Schneider's team so incredibly revealing.
Oh, absolutely.
His spokesperson released a statement regarding these allegations, and here's a key quote. They said, "Everything that happened was carefully scrutinized by dozens of involved adults and approved by the network."
They thought this was a defense.
Exactly. They thought this was a defense, but it's actually a confession. They just admitted the whole village was in.
Right.
They are openly admitting that dozens of professionals stood around watching a teenager being pressured into kissing a 30-year-old man, or watched a boss berate an actress he just allegedly harassed, and everyone just nodded, checked their clipboards, and approved.
It is a devastating articulation of the bystander effect within a toxic ecosystem.
Yeah.
When the person at the apex of the power structure operates with total impunity and the parent company financially rewards him, the dozens of involved adults are forced into a terrible calculus.
Right. They
either become complicit enablers of the culture, or they are too terrified for their own careers to intervene. They risk their own livelihoods, mortgages, and health insurance by speaking up.
So silence is required.
In a system like that, silence is not just encouraged, it is the required currency for professional survival.
And when you engineer an environment where dozens of adults are actively turning a blind eye, ignoring boundary pushing, ignoring bullying, accepting silence as the norm, you inadvertently create a perfect hunting ground.
You really do.
You create an unmonitored eco, which brings us to the darker shadows of this investment. The actual convicted criminal predators who operated within the ranks of Nickelodeon.
Yes.
Because while the network was busy managing the Golden Boys tantrum, horrific individuals were walking right through the front door.
This is the point where the discussion shifts from alleged workplace toxicity to catastrophic criminal negligence regarding child safety.
Yeah.
The documentary brought to light two specific individuals who were granted access to these sets. The first was Jason Handy.
Right.
Handy was a production assistant at Nickelodeon. A production assistant is the connective tissue of a set. They hand out schedules, they coordinate with families, they are constantly interacting with the actor.
Are everywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Handy presented himself as a goofy, approachable guy, but his actions were predatory in the extreme.
The source outlines what he was doing behind the scenes. While working on The Amanda Show, Handy was sending emails to an 11-year-old actor.
Yeah.
One of those emails contained a fully nude photograph of himself performing a sex act.
Terrific.
On another production, Cousin Skeeter, he attempted to kiss a 9-year-old actor. And this wasn't a sudden, uncharacteristic mistake.
No, not at all.
In 2003, authorities raided his home. They found a massive collection of child pornography. They also found his personal journals where he explicitly referred to himself as a full-blown predator.
A full-blown predator.
This is the person the network hired to hand-call children.
And tragically, Handy's presence was not an anomaly.
No.
Just a year after his home was raided, another figure deeply embedded in the Nickelodeon ecosystem was arrested, Brian Peck.
Right.
Peck worked as both an actor and a dialogue coach on hit shows like All That and Drake and Josh. And the warning signs were entirely visible. He was known to joke openly on set about exchanging letters with John Wayne Gacy, the notorious serial killer.
Wait, he was joking about a serial killer on a kid's set?
Yes, but because the baseline culture of the set was already so warped and boundaryless, the crew just absorbed this as a weird quirk of his personality rather than a glaring red flag.
That is just wow. In 2004, Brian Peck was convicted of child sex abuse.
Right.
And the aftermath of that conviction exposes the rot in the broader Hollywood support system. Peck was convicted, but he only served 16 months in prison.
Only 16 months.
How does that happen? Because during his sentencing, he received character reference letters from A-list Hollywood actors, directors, and producers vouching for him.
The industry rallied to protect the predator.
And even more horrifyingly, after he was released and required to register as a sex offender, he was still able to secure a job working for Disney on The Life of Zack and Cody. For 20 years, the identity of his victim remained a secret, until the 2024 revelation, when the beloved star came forward as Peck's victim. It was Drake Bell.
One of the biggest faces of the network.
Right.
Drake Bell's account of the abuse is profoundly harrowing. He detailed the methodical nature of the grooming process. Peck systematically won his trust, isolated him from his support systems, and then began the abuse.
Yeah.
Bell described the sheer terror of the situation, stating it just got worse and worse and worse, and I was trapped, and I had no way out.
Now, I want to be extremely clear, because it is crucial to keep the facts. Dan Schneider is not accused of the...
Right. He was not the one committing the acts that Jason Handy and Brian Peck committed.
But he was the captain of the ship. And we have to look at the mechanics of the environment. If a network's background checks and set security are so lax that a man writing letters to John Wayne Gacy coaching children, what is the fundamental failure?
This raises an important question about the vulnerability of child actors.
Yeah.
The failure stems from the industry's refusal to acknowledge that inherent vulnerability.
Yeah.
Let's break down the mechanics of a minor's day on a television set. By law, child actors are required to receive a certain number of hours of schooling. This means their day is highly fragmented.
Right, they're bounced.
Exactly. They're constantly being shuffled between the soundstage, the wardrobe department, the on-set tutor's trailer, and the dialogue coach's room.
So they are constantly...
And while parents are technically supposed to be present, the chaotic logistics of production frequently result in parents being separated from their children for long stretches.
Leaving them alone.
Right. This creates pockets of unmonitored isolation. The children are uniquely isolated. They're desperate for approval, eager to please adults, and often separated from their parents.
Which makes them prime targets.
Yeah, predators like Handy and Peck are keenly aware of these structural vulnerabilities. They seek out environments where access to children is high and adult supervision is fragmented or complacent.
It's grooming on an industrial scale.
The industry built an incredibly efficient assembly line to manufacture child stars, but they completely neglected to build a fortress to protect them.
An assembly line without a fortress. That perfectly captures the negligence. And now that this entire broken system has been dragged into the light, with the evidence fully public, how do the key players reckon with this legacy today?
Right.
We have the denials, the apologies, and the incredibly complex legacies that Dan Schneider did not just disappear into the shadows after Quiet on Set aired.
No, he did not.
In March 2024, he decided to mount a public response.
He released a video statement, roughly 20 minutes long, structured as an interview. From a crisis management perspective, it was a very specific strategy of containment. He did offer apologies for certain elements of his behavior.
Right.
He admitted that the on-set massages were inappropriate, stated he would never do something like that today, and apologized to anyone who felt uncomfortable.
He also acknowledged his practical jokes.
Yes, he acknowledged that his demanding management style created a difficult environment in the writer's room, and he apologized to his former staff.
But if you listen closely, the apology is wrapped in a very rigid layer of
Heavily caveated.
He admits to the massages, but he immediately claims they were only in public setting, as if the presence of a crew somehow nullifies the inappropriateness of a boss touching a
Exactly.
And while he apologizes for being a hothead, he draws a hard line regarding the more severe element. He strictly denies any sexualization, harassment, or facilitation of crime.
Right.
But the action that completely undercuts the video is what he did next.
The defamation lawsuit.
Yes. He sits on camera and says he owes people a pretty strong apology, but in the exact same breath, he files a massive lawsuit against the creators of the Quiet on Set doc.
Calling it a hit job.
Right. He accuses the filmmakers of executing a hit job intended to increase ratings by falsely linking him to actual convicted child predators. So let me ask you this. Can you genuinely apologize while legally attacking the megaphone?
Well, you reconcile it by separating public relations from legal liability. The video was designed to appease the court of public opinion, admit to the lesser charges of being a tough boss to appear contrite. But the lawsuit is designed to protect his future earning potential and legacy.
By attacking the broadcast?
Right. However, from a human perspective, you are entirely correct. The lawsuit effectively neutralizes the apology. It signals to the survivor that his contrition has a strict legal boundary.
Yeah.
And this aggressive, dual-track approach has deeply fractured the community of former child stars who worked for him.
The divide among the casts is incredibly complicated to observe. You have actors like Alexa Nicholas, who starred on Zoe 101.
Yeah.
She watched his apology video and she immediately rejected. She stated that he has no idea what accountability is.
He looked right past the PR strategy.
Exactly. But then you look at someone like Victoria Justice, who was the lead of this. Her response was completely different.
Deeply layered.
Right. She stated her relationship with him is complex. She recognized that he did things wrong, but she also acknowledged that she owes her career to him.
We must validate Victoria Justice's perspective because it perfectly illustrates the deeply conflicting psychology of trauma and gratitude.
Yeah.
Think about the psychological architecture of a child actor's, their entire identity, their financial security, their global fame. All of it is inextricably linked to the opportunities provided by Dan Schneider.
He's the author of their success.
For many of them, yes. To fully acknowledge that he was an abuser or that the system he ran was inherently toxic requires them to look back and retroactively taint the origin story of their entire life. The human brain struggles immensely to hold two contradictory truths: that the person who made all your dreams come true is also someone who inflicted deep harm on others. That friction results in those complex feelings of indebted loyalty intertwined with horror.
It's an emotional short circuit. And as we zoom out from Nickelodeon and Dan Schneider, we have to recognize that this fallout extends beyond one network.
It does.
It highlights a fatal flaw in the entertainment industry regarding child labor, leaving a trail of damaged lives. We have to look at the price of child stardom and the path forward.
The source material highlights the trajectory of Amanda Bynes as a devastating example of this pressure cooker.
Yeah.
Bynes was arguably the brightest, most naturally gifted comedic talent of her generation. She was elevated to megastar status before she was even old enough to drive.
Massive fame.
But as she attempted to navigate the transition into adulthood, her life derailed in incredibly public, tragic ways.
The timeline of her struggles is hard. Once a megastar, she faced DUIs, drug possession, and arrest for arson in 2013, and multiple psychiatric holds.
All right.
And in 2014, she posted a deeply alarming tweet accusing her father of abuse, but then immediately backtracked, claiming she was microchipped.
Incredibly sad.
Now, we must be clear, the source material does not directly link her specific struggles to Dan Schneider, but her public unraveling stands as a glaring monument to the crushing pressure of the
It underscores the intense pressure and fallout of child fame.
Exactly. It shows what happens when a human being achieves too much fame far too young, inside a corporate machine that extracts their talent but takes zero responsibility for their wealth.
It is the ultimate consequence of an industry that treats children as expendable commodities. Recognizing this systemic failure, some veterans of this era are demanding concrete reform. Ariana Grande, who found her breakout role on Victorious, has proposed some incredible practical solutions.
Right.
First, she argues that mandatory therapy 2 to 3 times a week must be legally written into the contracts of any minor working at that level.
That makes
And second, she insists that parents must be legally allowed to be present wherever they want on set at all times.
Let's test that logic. If you mandate therapy, you introduce an independent adult into the child's life whose paycheck isn't dependent on the show's.
You break the closed loop.
Exactly. And if you mandate open sets for parents, you eliminate the isolated pockets of time that predators exploit.
You destroy the isolation.
These solutions seem so incredibly basic, so fundamentally obvious, that it is genuinely terrifying to realize they aren't already the industry standard.
It really is.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, sitting at home watching TV with your own family? Why does the architecture of a 1990s Nickelodeon set matter?
It matters because it summarizes the core conflict, the collision of a profit-driven corporate model with the developmental needs of children.
Yeah.
When studios put ratings first, basic human decency is sidelined. The brightly colored sets and the manufactured laugh tracks are designed to anesthetize your critical thinking.
The glossy sheen.
Right. But behind that glossy sheen of the screen, vulnerable young performers suffer life-ruining consequences. This entire history demands that we watch the entertainment industry with a much sharper, more critical eye regarding how it treats its most vulnerable workers.
We absolutely cannot accept the slapstick at face value anymore.
No, we can't.
Today, we briefly recap the journey from a quirky 80s sidekick who figured out how to leverage the system and become an unchecked showrunner. We examined the enablers at the network level, who calculated that a $7 million payout was a fair price for their brain.
We looked at the horrifying reality of predators operating in plain sight.
And we listened to the survivors who refused the hush money, up to the modern-day demands for. Thank you for joining us, Dive.
It's been an important conversation. Every piece of media we consume has a human cost.
It does.
Yeah.
But before we sign off, I want to leave you with one final chilling idea.
Okay.
We spent a lot of time discussing how these shows acted as a comfort watch that shaped a generation.
Yeah.
So if nostalgic media quietly shaped our childhood understanding of what was funny or normal in relationship, how much of our own behavior today was subtly influenced by the toxic environment of a 1990s writer's room? Think about that the next time you hear a laugh track.